Today, we're going to be building on a system to automate our project management using Zapier. And not only are we going to be able to create a project management file, but by the end of this video, you're also going to be able to understand how to update those files on the go, how to add extra files, and how to really do anything you want to change the file over time so that you can remove yourself from the project management system and allow it to run itself. And by the end of the system, and by the end of this video, if you follow through to the end, you'll be able to literally have a blueprint that you'll be able to sell to potential clients for thousands of dollars, or you can use it in your own business to essentially allow yourself to, save time and make more money. So just as a backstory here, right? For my business, we have about 400 projects on the go at any given time. And, before we had a system like this, it was a nightmare. Like it was just always a continuous struggle because we would either be missing tasks completely, like the project deadline would go by and we'd miss, certain things that we probably should have taken care of, or we'd be scrambling and panicking last minute trying to fix things before, the deadline was due. And that was just a really terrible way to run a business. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I made early on in my career. And by building a system like this, it really just removes all that stress, right? So that you can really focus on the tasks you need to get done, not like a day or two in advance, but weeks or months in advance, and always be on time. Know exactly where everyone is on your team and know that they're doing everything that needs to be done well in advance, right? So it's going to save in my case, it saved me so much stress, and I'm sure that it can also do the same for anyone who uses the system like this. So if that sounds like something you guys are interested in, let's dive into it right now. In front of me, I have ClickUp. Now, there's probably like 20 different ClickUp or project management softwares you can use. You can do ClickUp.com, you can use Monday.com, you can use Asana, and a million other versions, but we're just going to build something really simple. And how this is going to work, because we want to fully automate this process so that you don't have to be the one coming in here and always updating things over time. So we want to automate this, and how we automate this is using a platform called Zapier.com, right? So essentially what this workflow is going to look like is we're going to automate the ClickUp tasks using Zapier, and we're going to just have a very basic CRM setup, right? So we're going to have a basic CRM setup. For this purpose, I'm just going to use Google Sheets just because it's free and easy to get started. But for most of you there, I'm assuming you'd use like a CRM like Go High Level, or you'd use like maybe HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever it is that you may be using. And we can kind of mirror all of it, but we're just going to start with something free, which is Google Sheets. And then we're going to feed this data through Zapier, right, which allows you to connect multiple different applications together. And we're going to automate the process of building this project management system in ClickUp. And you can also use whatever project management software you want. It's probably going to be the same for all of them. And they really, at this day and time, they all have the integrations to be able to do this. So that's what we're going to be going ahead and doing. Now, if you don't have an account for ClickUp, you can go ahead and sign up for one, and it is free. Now, we're going to build out this platform or this kind of project management system here. So I'm going to go into the test folder here, and we have a list. I'm going to create a new list here. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the three dots here, and I'm going to search for the templates here. And we can browse by templates, but just for the purpose of this particular tutorial, we're going to use the add schedule here, right? So I kind of like this. This looks good to me, and we can go ahead and use this template here, okay? And we can just go ahead and call it add schedule once again, and we can keep all of the default settings here the way they are, and we're going to load this template. Okay, sweet. So in our test folder, we have created the new list called ads schedule here. And when ClickUp decides to eventually load in like 20,000 years, it'll be here. All right, so I just had to actually reload the page. For whatever reason, it wasn't coming up right away. So reloaded it, and here we are. We have a generic project management system here, right? For social ads, 1, social ads 2, brochure 1, brochure 3. Now, obviously, you just go ahead and create whatever projects you want to add in here. And the idea here that we're going to run through is that in our basic CRM, we have a client, right? And when that client becomes a new customer and not a lead, right? So when they pay and when they sign and they become a client, we can just mark them as client. And when we go ahead and we mark them as client, we essentially want to go ahead and create this project folder for them. And we'll have a template to start with, right? So that with that template, we can apply it to any client that becomes, that pays and signs. And we can have multiple different templates depending on what kind of client they are. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna add and update tasks immediately and then once again over time, right? So we're going to be really customizing this as granularly as you want, and it's gonna be 100% automated. Okay, so what we want to do is also create a Google Sheet, and this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to have in the description down below this blueprint, so you can come in and you can save this blueprint and you can use this and make a copy of it. And we're going to have just basic sheet with the client's name, email, project type, the due date for that project, the stage that they're at, and then a ClickUp ID. And we'll get into this later, but this is how we will be able to update in real time that ClickUp folder. And then we have potential upsells here, right? So we could have like an SEO package. We could also have another one here, like maybe we want Facebook ads package, right? And we can just go ahead and check that off. And then over here, we have another ID, and we'll use this to reference a task later on. So this is kind of like our very basic setup here. And what we want to do first step is we want to make sure that when we change the client from lead to customer, right, or client, that we automatically generate this project management system for that. And how we're going to be using, or how we're going to be doing that is through Zapier here. Right? So we're going to connect Google Sheets, and we're also going to be connecting ClickUp together so that when something happens in Google Sheets, we have something else that happens in ClickUp. So in this case, we're creating that project management file. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So in Zapier, and by the way, you can get started for free using Zapier if you haven't already, but we're going to just go ahead and create a new Zap. If you guys are unfamiliar with Zapier, by the way, this is part of a larger series where I walk through everything you need to know from the very beginning to the very end of Zapier and how you can pretty much automate your whole business. So please go ahead and watch the previous videos as well, because it'll really, really help out. Now, we have a trigger and we have an action. Well, the trigger is going to be what starts this. And the logical step here is that when we have them converted from lead to client, well, we create that project management file, right? So we need to make sure that in Zapier, the trigger is such that when this becomes client, well, we create that project management file. So how we go about doing that is we just add a trigger here, and we're going to do Sheets, and we'll select Google Sheets and just make sure that you have the account integrated. We're going to go ahead and choose updated sheet row, right? So when we update this row to client, it will start this automation. We'll click continue, and we'll choose an account here. Now, I already have my account. Okay, I am just kidding. I don't actually have the account loaded in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and give myself permission so that Zapier can have access to Google Sheets. And that will allow it to register when we update from client lead to client here. We'll continue and choose the spreadsheet, which will be basic CRM. And the worksheet will be worksheet number 1 here. Worksheets are just essentially down here. At the bottom here, you can see like worksheet 5 and 4 and stuff like that. In this instance, we're just using worksheet 1. And the trigger column is going to be the client stage, right? So once again, when this changes, column E, client stage, then we want to create a project management system. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. So we'll get some live data that we can use, and perfect. So we have the information here. Now, we want to filter this to make sure that when this is updated, we're only firing it when it becomes a customer, right? We don't want it to fire if we change it back to a lead, right? So only when it becomes a client, and that's where the filter comes in. We want to make sure that the client stage is not a lead. It contains client, and I'm just going to make sure I spelled this correctly. Okay, perfect. So only if this is a client, then we'll continue with this automation. In this case, it's registering as a lead, so it would not continue. And then we'll add another action here, and we'll choose ClickUp. And the first thing that we can do, and this is kind of up to taste, guys. This is up to your preferences. For me personally, like, well, I guess it just depends, but you can load in a template, right? So if you have like 10 or 15 or 20 different tasks that you want to load in, you can use a template, right? And you can load all of it in. Or you can go task by task and create a list in ClickUp and then create 20 different tasks. Obviously, that's going to be a lot longer, but in the long run, it's going to be more granular because you can assign different users, you can assign different due dates, you can assign so many different things. So personally, I would just do it task by task, but I'm going to show you both instances on how you can do this, the fast way and then the longer way. And I'll give you an example for each, just so that you can decide for yourself what you prefer to do. Okay, so we're gonna choose the event here, and we're gonna come down here and create a list. Okay, we'll click continue. We're gonna wanna choose the account here, and we'll go ahead and choose that account. Sweet. And okay, so I actually chose the wrong account, so we'll back up here and change and create a new connection. And we're just gonna have to authenticate and give permission to Zapier to be able to control ClickUp. I'll select the right account and connect to the workspace, and then we're good to go here. We'll come back into Zapier, continue, and choose the right workspace. This will be a bit redundant after some time. We're just gonna drill down until we find this particular folder here. We wanna find the test folder and then add it here. So we're gonna choose team space, which is the only space available. And then the folder, we'll do test. And then we have template option here. And we created a template of this earlier, right? By hitting these three dots and selecting the templates from the list here and then creating that template. So now this is considered a template, and we can reference that template here and recreate it as many times as you want for different customers. We'll call the list name, let's just do ads schedule, and we can reference the name here of the client. So I'm actually gonna put this at the beginning. Okay, perfect. Jono Catliff's ad schedule. Sweet. And then we can go ahead and test it out. So we'll continue and we will test this step. And let's take a look in ClickUp and see if it was loaded in. Okay, perfect. So we have a template here, right? And now what we can do is we can automatically generate this template anytime that we switch from lead to client. So anytime we do that, now we will automatically generate that Zapier template. Now, let's say that you either want to add more tasks to just that generic template. Let's say, for example, a client, you want to customize the package and you want to add something else in addition to it. Like maybe you want to add an SEO package. Well, you can go ahead and customize that, right? By adding tasks to this ClickUp list that we just created. So we'll go back to ClickUp. And what we'll do is we're just gonna do one example here where we add a task. So we're gonna create a task and we'll drill down again and choose the team space and folder. Okay, and choose the test folder. If you guys hate yourself after doing this like 2 million times, I'm so sorry. But the good news is once you do it enough times, you finish and you never have to do it again. So that's the one beautiful thing, is that you have to only do this once and then never again. So I'm sorry in advance for the repetitive nature of this. Okay, and then we'll choose the list. Now, you could go ahead and select Jono Catalyst Ad Schedule, but the problem is that every future client that you select after this will also have Jono Catalyst Ad Schedule here. So instead, you want to create a custom variable here, and you want to reference the ID that we just created from the list above. So we just created this list, right? And we need to find the ID of this list, and how we can do that is we can reference that ID by selecting custom here. So in the list, we go to custom, we go to the number 3 where we created the list, and there should be an ID here somewhere. If we just scroll down enough, it should be this list ID, but I'm just gonna go ahead and filter just because I wanna see the options here. So list ID, okay, perfect. So there we have it. We have the list ID. And then you could have a templated task here, for example, but in this instance, we don't. And I'm just gonna say that for this example, maybe because we have like a tier 1 or tier 2, maybe what we do is we have something so that let's say for tier 2, for example, we add something where we do conversion tracking for the client. So we have a task name, say install conversion tracking for the client, right? And we'll just include the Google Tag Manager setup for this client. Okay, awesome. And we can go by assignee email, or we can also just select the assignees. I'm just going to go ahead and select the assignees. I'm going to select myself, but you could select, another team member here. Task status. We're going to go ahead and choose open. For this, you can add any tags related to the project here. Priority, I will go ahead and just select normal. Due date, what we can do here is we can click this to reference what kind of formatting we can enter in for the date, right? Because we just want to make sure we enter the right formatting so Zapier understands, how to say, the deadline is in 2 days from now, or the deadline is tomorrow, or whatever the case might be. So in this little clock here, we can go down the page here, and it will say supported date and time formats. So for example, maybe we do in 2 days from now at noon. So you can just try this in 2 days at noon. And then start date will be now, let's say, and we'll just go ahead and kind of say this is Q1, and marketing type, let's just say this is online. Okay, perfect. And we'll just do marketing objective here, track conversions. Sweet. So we can go ahead and let's take a look and see if this worked, specifically the due date here. We just want to make sure that that does actually work in that format. Okay, we'll send it over. Okay, sweet. So it looked like it worked. And now we have install conversion tracking that's assigned to me. The start time is today, and then it's due in 2 days from now. Today's Thursday, so it's due on Saturday. And then you can see it says 3 p.m. I think it's just the time zone adjustment here. So just make sure that your time zones are aligned if you want to have an accurate hourly deadline here. And we're good to go. Okay, sweet. And let's just say, for example, maybe we only want this task if we have it so that Google Ads Tier 2 is the project type that the client was requesting. So we can go ahead and filter based on this spreadsheet row. We can have project type contains, and we'll copy this. Google Ads Tier 2. We'll remove this rule and add an OR group here. And we'll also select it as project type contains Tier 3, right? So if the client, for example, was to purchase Tier 2 or Tier 3, then we would have this additional task that we'd want to complete for their particular project. So at a very basic level, that is how you can go about creating a list and add tasks to a list immediately in ClickUp and track all of your different tasks that you need to complete for that particular customer. You can assign it to particular people, you can add deadlines and priorities and all of that kind of stuff. So this is going to keep you super organized. Now, that is just how you can create a list and add tasks to an existing list. But what happens if you want to go back and maybe over time you want to add things automatically? Let's say that they purchase another upsell, and by purchasing that additional upsell, maybe what you want to do is you want to go back into this project management system automatically and add that additional upsell, right? That's what we're going to be building next. So if we come back in to Google Sheets here, maybe we want to have it so that if they check this off, right, then we come back in and we add to this list, right? So there's a two-step process here that we need to undergo, right? So number one is we need to be able to find that list. And then once we find it, then we need to update it, right? And how we find it is we have to reference that list by the ID. So we need to know what the ID of the list is. And how we go about doing that is first saving the ID of the list in Google Sheets. And then once we have that ID, then we can later reference it and update it over time. So let's go ahead and do that. We just have one last step here, which we need to do. And we need to go ahead and update this sheet so that we get the ClickUp list ID here. Okay, so we'll continue on with Sheets, and we're going to select Update Spreadsheet Row, click Continue, continue again, and we just need to find this spreadsheet. So it'll be Basic CRM, and the worksheet will be sheet number 1. And you could add a search step here, but what we'll do instead is we'll come down to custom, and we need to find this row number. How we find this row number is it will actually give us the row number in step 1 here. So we can come into custom and then go scroll down until we see row number here. So we'll just select row number or row ID, and now we can reference that exact row number. And all we want to do is just add the ClickUp ID here. And how we're going to reference that is through module number 3 here, action number 3. And we'll just do the list ID. So we need to add in that particular list ID. So let's just take a look and see where it is. Okay, sweet. So the list ID is here, right? We can go ahead and we can test this step out. So if I click test here and I go back, now we have the ClickUp project ID here, right? So now we're going to be able to reference this particular ClickUp project here and be able to update it over time. And we can also do the same thing with tasks as well. We just need that task ID to be able to update that as well. Okay, so great. We have our initial workflow in Zapier complete here. So I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this Create ClickUp Project File. Awesome. And you could just go ahead and turn that on. And we'll just publish this quickly. Okay, great. It's turned on and now it's working. And definitely for any other clients that we turn from lead into customers, right? Now what we want to do is we want to have another workflow where we essentially can update this list over time, and we want to make sure that we update it when the SEO package is checked here, right? So we're going to go back into our test folder here, and what we're going to do is create another workflow that we can update the existing ClickUp project file here. Okay, so here we go. We'll create a new Zap, and we'll name this update project file. Okay, and the trigger is going to be very similar to the last workflow we created. It'll be Sheets, and let's say that we're gonna update the sheet row, continue, choose the account, the correct account, click continue again. And then once again, makes me laugh because this is always so repetitive, right? And sometimes I'm just going through these, videos. I'm like, man, I don't even know what to say as I'm kind of like getting to the bottom. You're going through the same tasks over and over and over again. That's funny. But the trigger column this time is going to be a column G here, right? So it's going to be when this is checked off. So trigger column is G, right? And you can have another trigger column for every single upsell that you want. But in this case, it's just going to be SEO package here. Just as a quick example of how you can use it, right? And I'm not saying this is necessarily the best way to do it, but this is just going to give you little ideas, right? That will be able to turn into great things in your business, right? As long as you understand the basics of how you can kind of use this technology, then you can use it to customize it to your own business needs and be able to really maximize the amount of money you make, right? Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and test this trigger out. We'll add an action, and that is going to be a filter. Same kind of deal as before. We want to make sure that the filter is such that we have the SEO package labeled as true. So it's going to be true. When you're dealing with checkboxes here, it's either true if it's checked or false if it's not, right? So that's how we know to put true here. We'll click continue. And then what we can do is we'll add another step here. Oops, we'll just let this save here. And we're going to go back to ClickUp, right? And we're going to create another task. Create task, okay? And we'll click continue again, choose the right account here. And the workspace, once again, super repetitive. We're just gonna drill down here, team space, task name will be SEO project, and complete an SEO project for a client. Let's just say as a description. And then we just need to make sure that we have the right list here, right? So we're gonna go into the test folder, and then we have a list here, right? And we wanna reference the particular client list, but this is always gonna be changing, so we don't actually know which one it is. And if you just hard code it, it's gonna just go to some random clients list every single time. So we need to come in here and click custom, and then we need to reference that ID from the sheet, right? Because we put it here in column F. So we're gonna reference column F, which is ClickUp ID. And now we have the correct ID to be able to come back and update this over time, whenever we want to, right? So we could just, go ahead and complete this, add a user, add a priority, normal, due date could be tomorrow, for example. And let's just say now, maybe it's a really tight deadline. We just, you got to get it done. Okay, awesome. So we can go ahead and actually one last thing here is I'm just going to make sure that we do online again and click continue and test. And it's been completed. Now we have the SEO project here, right? Open, and now over time you can add things to this project so that it can change and evolve as the project changes and evolves too, right? And of course you can do that through checkboxes, but if you're using a CRM, anytime you add a custom field, for example, you could trigger an automation to update this, right? So there's an infinite number of ways that you can essentially update a project over time. This is just like one of the most basic rudimentary forms of doing that. Okay, awesome. And just if you wanted to, let's say, update this particular task over time, right? So maybe you want to come back and you want to add to that particular SEO task. Maybe you want to add, maybe subtasks to it. all you need to do is just save that ID of the task, right? So for example, on this particular task, if we look at the task ID, this is what it's going to be, right? The task ID. So we would just need to save this task ID into this column here, and then we could reference it at any point in time. So if we went ahead and did that, we just go back into Google Sheets, choose Update Row, Spreadsheet Row, click Continue. And I'm not going to walk through exactly how you can, update it and recreate something, but just to give perspective on, how to go about doing this, we just go back into Basic Spreadsheet Row, choose the worksheet, which would be Sheet 1, choose the row once again, which would be from the first trigger step here, where we have the row number, okay? And then all we need to do is essentially save that final review step, right? So we do task ID, and just make sure to choose the right ID here. So it'd be ID in this case, and then click Continue, and we can test this step. And now we have the ID, and we could reference it the same way we referenced this list, right? But instead of the list and referencing that and creating tasks for that list, now we could reference that task and either create subtasks. We could update that task over time, right? So instead of, just as an example of what you could do here, ClickUp, you could, so first of all, you could create a subtask, right? By referencing that task ID, you could post a task comment or post attachments to that particular task over time as things come in. And then you could update that task in general, right? So you could update or add it however you want, and that'll essentially allow you to really have as much flexibility as possible over ClickUp, so that as your project needs evolve, then you can automatically evolve your project management system and assign the right tasks, the right people to get done at the right time at any point in time in the history of that particular project. Just the last thing that I want to share with you guys today is just something that I use to great success, and that is delayed tasks being generated. So for example, maybe, instead of having a different list for every single client, right? Like this, let's say you're running like 400 different lists. It can get quite overwhelming. Maybe you just want one list and you kind of combine all of the tasks into it, right? Which is another way to do it. I do this to great effect as well. What you can do is you can generate tasks over time as the project gets closer to the deadline, right? So instead of having a list where there's just like 10,000 tasks, and your team's sitting there being like getting paralysis by analysis because it's just so overwhelming, and maybe your projects, some of the tasks are due like 6 months or 12 months in advance, and you don't necessarily need to show them, right, at a given time. Well, of course you could filter in ClickUp, or you could just assign them at a later point in time. I just go ahead and assign them at a later point in time. And how you could do that is, let's say here, what you could do is you could have a step here, for example, and what we're gonna do here is we would have a formatter by Zapier, and we're going to work with date and time. So we wanna wait until, let's say, a month before the deadline here of this project, and then add another task, right? And maybe that task is, hey, call the client and get approval on, the project so far, so that we can at least understand where they're at before we deliver the end result to them, just as an example. So in that instance, we could come back into Zapier, we could manipulate the date, we're gonna add or subtract time, right? The input is going to be this particular due date here. So we could have a due date, we'll pull in the due date field, and the expression will be, let's just see, I just want to make sure I get this right. So it's going to be minus 1 month, right? So a month before, we're going to change this due date to a month before. So instead of July 23rd, it's going to be June 23rd. and we need to find the format that it starts in, and it's month, month, day, day, year, 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 year. And you can see that here. If you just highlight over this, it's month, month, day, day, and then 4 for the year. And it's going to be to the same output as well. So month, month, day, day, year, 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 and click continue. Test that step. We're just going to make sure, okay, sweet. So it came out a month earlier, right? And then we could have a wait step or a delay step. Right, okay. And we would delay until, click continue, and then delay until this outputted time, right? And how should we handle dates in the past? Let's say that we're waiting until a month before it's due, but this project comes in and it's like, 29 days before the project's actually due, and this date has already passed that we generated. How do you want to handle that? Do you want it to just continue, right, if it's up to 1 day behind, or just always continue, or how do you want to handle that? I would just leave it as a default, so that up to a day after the actual deadline here, it still continues. And then if it's like, let's say 20 days from the due date here, but it's supposed to be triggering this workflow 30 days out, but it's 20 days, and that's a huge discrepancy, you can just skip it. So you could go ahead and click continue, and that way you can create tasks in ClickUp where you would only create it 30 days before a task is due. So that's just another way you could go about doing it. The possibilities are endless here, really. And essentially, just building on a system like this is something that you could literally sell to your clientele, or you could go on Upwork and sell automation services and sell like a package like this for thousands of dollars, right? And the cool thing is you can almost template it and duplicate it over and over and over again. The blueprints will be down in the description, so you can literally just copy what I built for you guys, and you could just repurpose it and sell it to somebody else for a lot of money, or you could use it for your own business and leverage it for great success, right? Not only saving time, but also making more money, and really just stopping mistakes from happening, right? That's the biggest thing, is just really getting your business under control and making sure that everything is streamlined and goes according to plan. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked this content and you want to see more of it, please hit the subscribe button down below. It really helps me out, right? And lets me know that I'm doing a good job. Also, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button. And if you guys have any future video ideas that you'd like to see done, you can leave it in the comments down below. If you guys want to reach out and you have any questions, please send me an email or hit me up on Instagram. I'll see you guys in the next one, and thanks once again. Bye-bye.